Attention please. Hello everyone. Myself Dr. Jaydeep Thakkar. Today we talk about basic understanding in metabolism. First we try to understand definition of metabolism. There are so many reactions running in the cell of living organism. The aim of running of this reaction is to sustain the life of the cell. It means consist of series of reactions that occur within cell of living organism to sustain life. In the process of metabolism, what happens? In the process of metabolism, they involve many interconnected cellular pathways to ultimately provide cell with the energy required to carry out their function. If we try to understand in a simple way that so many reactions running in the body, they interconnected and they produce energy, and they provide energy to the cell for the carry out their function as well as sustain life. In last slide, we will understand in brief. Metabolism is subdivided into anabolism and catabolism. What is anabolism? In this phase, complex molecule. Which type of complex molecule? Like as a protein, fat, carbohydrate. They make up body tissue are formed from simple one. It means the simple molecule converted into the complex molecule and they make body tissue. In which phase? The phase of anabolism. What is catabolism? In catabolism, the complex molecule formed in the phase of anabolism, they break down into simpler one. And during the breakdown of the complex molecule in the catabolism, they release energy, and the energy provided to the cell for carry out their function as well as sustain life. This is the simple figure for the understanding the process of catabolism as well as anabolism. First we understand process of catabolism. In stage 1, complex molecule. Which type of complex molecule? Carbohydrate, lipid, protein and nucleic acid. In stage 2, they converted into simple monomers, simple constitutes like as a monosaccharide, fatty acid, glycerol, amino acid, nucleotides. Then in stage 3, in catabolism, what form? Metabolic intermediates form, acetyl coenzyme A, pyruvates, and due to the help of these metabolic intermediates, they converted into the small molecule. In the catabolism, in the stage 1 there are no energy produced, but in stage 2 or stage 3 there are energy produced, energy release. Now we understand anabolism. In catabolism we see top to bottom, and in anabolism it is going to bottom to top, means small molecule converted into simple monomer constitute and then converted into complex molecule which will be used from body tissue. In the most biological reactions are organized into metabolic sequence and broadly process may be subdivided into 3 stages in stage 1, 2 or 3. And during catabolism, we progress from stage 1 to 3 where anabolic sequence go from bottom to top. What happen in stage 1 catabolism? Complex molecules are break down into monomer building blockers. This stage does not release energy, means stage 1 does not release energy. It may need energy for the activation, means the process of stage 1 they require energy. The next 2 stages generate energy that is trapped as a ATP and reducing power. The biosynthesis pathway on the other hand use simple precursor to assemble complex molecule and require both ATP and equivalent. Why we have to necessary basic understanding in metabolism? In the process of metabolism within cell, it means the process of metabolism within body changes as a result of surgery or acute illness. So it is important area of knowledge, so we have necessary basic understanding in metabolism. It means there are so many reactions running in the body, we understand in the first slide, and we also understand there are many cellular pathway interconnected and they produce energy for the purpose of carry out the function of the cell as well as in sustain life in the living organism. When any alternation seen in this process, if we understand simply that when any alternation seen in the process, what happened? There are either medical condition arise or surgical condition arise. So body changes. So the process of metabolism within the body changes as a result of a surgery or acute illness. And for the management of this condition, either in the medical condition or surgical condition, for the proper management, we have to necessary basic understanding in metabolism because this condition arise due to alternation of the process of the metabolism. A key metabolic process within body is the liberation of energy by breakdown of substance. In the process of catabolism, we see in stage 2 and stage 3 there are complex molecule breakdown, and during this process the energy release, it means the liberation of energy by the breakdown of substance ingested as a food. Means when we substance ingested as a food, they break down, and during the breakdown of the ingested food, substance of the ingested food, the energy release in the food which major constitute used as a normal diet, like as a carbohydrate, protein and fat. Means this substance break down during the ingestion of the food and energy liberated. This is the simple figure of the outline of the pathway for the catabolism of carbohydrate, protein and fat. also understand this thing in the previous figure. We try to understand this figure. The main constituent of the diet, carbohydrate, protein and fat, when we ingested as a food, what happened? Digestion and absorption of this constitute. After that, what happened? In the stage 2, they converted into simple sugar, mainly glucose, in carbohydrate, in protein, amino acid, and in fat. They converted into fatty acid plus glycerol. During the process of catabolism, all this pathway, carbohydrate, protein and fat, lead to in the production of acetyl coenzyme A. Means during the process of catabolism, in the second stage, when they produce from carbohydrate to simple sugar, from protein to amino acid, and from fat to fatty acid plus glycerol, they lead to production of the acetyl coenzyme A, and acetyl coenzyme A finally oxidized in the citric acid cycle. Now we try to understand overview of metabolism. In the overview of the pathway, which three major energy sources, means the major constituent substance we use as a diet, fat, carbohydrate and protein, can be used to produce ATP. And ATP is the main unit of energy within the body. Means ATP is the main unit of energy which is used for carry out the function of cell of living organism, as well as they sustain the life. It means an overview of the pathway by which three major energy sources like as a fat, carbohydrate and protein can be used to produce ATP. ATP is the main unit of energy within the body, and they use for carry out the function of cell of living organism as well as sustain the life. Glucose is predominantly metabolized via glycolysis, free fatty acid via beta oxidation and protein via deamination. This is the various pathway of the metabolism. Means glucose is metabolized via glycolysis, free fatty acid via beta oxidation and protein via deamination. We will understand in detail in the specific chapter of this pathway. What is the common endpoint for all these pathways? Means the common endpoint for all these pathways is acetyl coenzyme A, which can be used as a substrate for very efficient production of the ATP via citric acid cycle, also known as a Krebs or tricarboxylic acid cycle, when oxygen is available, means aerobic metabolism. Means the common endpoint for all this pathway, acetyl coenzyme A, it is used as a substrate for very efficient production of the ATP via citric acid cycle. Citric acid cycle also known as a Krebs cycle, tricarboxylic acid cycle in the aerobic metabolism. Means in condition of the aerobic metabolism, the common endpoint for all this pathway we see in previous slides. Acetyl coenzyme is used as a substrate for a production of very efficient production of the ATP via citric acid cycle also known as a Krebs or tricarboxylic acid cycle. During the presence of oxygen means aerobic metabolism. This is the figure, highly simplified overview of fat, carbohydrate and protein metabolism. We try to understand this figure. First we understand fat. What happened during the catabolism and during the second stage? Fatty acid and glycerol produced in carbohydrate. From polysaccharide, glucose produced, and in protein, from polypeptide, amino acid produced. If we see this figure carefully, all these three pathways, finally when we go to the end point of this acetyl coenzyme A, like as a fat goes into via beta oxidation to acetyl coenzyme A in carbohydrate, glucose from glycolysis they finally goes into the end product of the acetyl coenzyme A. Same in the protein, that from polypeptide amino acid for deamination or either transamination they go into the acetyl coenzyme A, and acetyl coenzyme A finally, if we simply understand, go into the Krebs cycle. For which purpose? The production of the ATP. In this figure we easily understand catabolism as well as anabolism. Now we try to understand general organization of metabolic pathways. Metabolic pathway is a sequence of reaction they produce end product. It is the sequence that serve the function. Means in previous slide, in first slide we understand there are so many reactions running in the body. As a metabolic pathway is the sequence of reaction they produce end product, and that what's in serve the function. The sequence of this metabolic pathway are organized in the different way, such as a linear, branched, cyclic acid and spiral way. Even the enzyme of metabolic sequence are generally organized into multi-enzyme complex, multifunctional enzyme, or as a membrane-bound complex. Such as an organized unit of metabolism are called metabolon. What is metabolon? Even the enzyme of metabolic sequence are generally organized into multi-enzyme complexes, multifunctional enzyme, or as a membrane-bound complex. Such as an organized unit of metabolism are called metabolon. There are various examples of metabolic pathway. First we see about linear pathway. What happened in the linear pathway? This pathway used as a represent when precursor or substrate is converted into product by a series of reactions. Means in the series of reaction, the precursor or substrate is converted into the product. The product of one reaction is the substrate of next reaction until the final product form. It means the product of one reaction means In the one reaction there are product form. It is the substrate of the next reaction until the final product form. Why? Because this pathway is represented as a series of reactions. So the product of one reaction of the substrate, the product of one reaction is a substrate of the next reaction until the final product form. The example of this pathway is partial breakdown of glucose to pyruvate by glycolysis is the example of the linear pathway. Means glucose converted into the pyruvated by the glycolysis it is the partial breakdown, and it is the example of the linear pathway. This is just a schematic figure of the linear pathway. This is the substrate, intermediates, and final product. Now spiral pathway. In the spiral pathway can be viewed as variation of the linear pathway. In this case, what happened? Substrate will be processed to multiple round of same sequence of reaction. It means in linear pathway they processed with the series of reaction, and in the spiral pathway they processed through multiple round of the same sequence of the reaction. In the spiral pathway, what we see? Each time would be either on incremental decrease or increase the length of spiral pathway. This process will continue until the desired product is obtained. It means during the process of spiral pathway, what happened? The length of spiral pathway is either decrease or increase, and this process is continue until the desired product is obtained, means final product is obtained. The beta oxidation of fatty acid is the spiral pathway. The result of this release acetyl coenzyme after each round and decrease the length of spiral by 2 carbon unit. It means after each round of spiral pathway of beta oxidation, acetyl coenzyme is released, and parallel, what happened? The length of spiral pathway is decreased by 2 carbon unit. This is the schematic representation of the spiral pathway. Third is the branched pathway. What happened in branched pathway? It starts with the shared reaction, and subsequently an intermediate can be divided into more than one route. In branched pathway, they divided into the more than one route. The divergent pathway will produce more than one end product. This type of divergent theme is characteristic as an anabolic sequence. The biosynthesis of 3 aromatic amino acids in plant and bacteria is one such example. If we try to understand in a simple way, the branched pathway begins with shared reaction, then divided into more than one route. Then what happened? More than one route they divided, then produce more than one end product, and the production of more than one product, it is characteristic as an anabolic sequence. And the example is biosynthesis of 3 aromatic amino acids in plant and bacteria in such an example. This is just a simple figure of the branched pathway. Just see this figure, the simple figure of the branched pathway. Now cyclic pathway. In cyclic pathway, generally two substrates are involved. One of them regenerated through series of reaction and other is converted to the product converted into the product. Tricarboxylic acid is the cyclic pathway in which oxaloacetate reaction with acetyl coenzyme A and regenerated with release of two molecules of CO2. What they say? That two substrates are involved. One is generated from the series of reaction, means the process, if we understand in the simple language, and the other is converted into the product. It means the two substrates are involved. One is the regenerated through series of reaction and other converted into the product. And what is the example of cyclic pathway? TCA cycle is the cyclic pathway. Why? Oxaloacetate react with the acetyl coenzyme A and regenerated with release of two molecules of CO2. Means first their oxaloacetate react with acetyl coenzyme A and then regenerate with the release of two molecules of this CO2. This is the schematic representation of the cyclic pathway. Just look this figure. Like as a generally two substances involved. This is the simple table we try to understand. If we understand this table easily, we can easily the specific chapter of the various metabolic pathway. This table is the summary of major metabolic feature of the principal organ. We try to understand one by one. First, we try to understand liver. The liver involved, or either which pathway running in the liver, like as a glycolysis, gluconeogenesis, lipogenesis, beta oxidation, citric acid cycle, ketogenesis, lipoprotein lipase, metabolism of drug, synthesis of bile salt, urea, uric acid, cholesterol, and plasma protein. In this all pathway, the liver are either directly or indirectly involved. Or if we try to understand in simple way, they all are running in the liver. The main substrates in the liver: non-esterified fatty acid, glucose in fat state, lactate, glycerol, fructose, amino acid, and alcohol. Which major product exported? Like as a glucose, triglyceride in VLDL means very low density lipoprotein, ketone bodies, urea, uric acid, bile salt, cholesterol, and plasma protein. Specialized enzyme means which enzyme involved? Glucokinase, glucose 6-phosphatase, glycerol kinase, phosphoenol pyruvate, carboxykinase, phosphofructokinase, arginase, HMG-CoA synthesis, HMG-CoA lyase, alcohol dehydrogenase. In the first slide, we understand that there are cellular pathway interconnected and they produce the energy and they provide to the cell for the carry out their function and the sustain life. First, see in the organ liver, there are so many pathways, they are interconnected, and the major product exported like as a glucose, triacylglycerol, ketone bodies, urea, uric acid, bile salt, and cholesterol plasma protein. And this specialized enzyme involved. In brain, which pathway running? Glycolysis, citric acid cycle, amino acid, metabolism, neurotransmitter synthesis. Main substrate, glucose, amino acid, ketone bodies in prolonged starvation. Product exported, lactate, end product of neurotransmitter metabolism. And the enzyme for the synthesis and catabolism of the neurotransmitter, it is used in heart, beta oxidation and citric acid cycle. Main substrate is ketone bodies, non-esterified fatty acid, lactate, chylomicron and VLDL and triacylglycerol. And the enzyme involved lipoprotein lipase, very active electrotransport chain. In the adipose tissue, lipogenesis, esterification of fatty acid, lipoprotein and fasting, glucose, chylomicrons and VLDL triacylglycerol, non-esterified fatty acid, glycerol. It is the product exported, and this is the various enzyme like as a lipoprotein lipase, hormone sensitive lipase, enzyme of the pentose phosphate pathway, slow twitch muscles, the enzyme involved in beta oxidation and citric acid cycle in the ketone body, chylomicron and VLDL is the product main substrate. And lipoprotein lipase, electron transport chain. In kidney, gluconeogenesis, non-esterified fatty acid, lactate, glycerol, glucose and glycerol kinase, the phosphoenol pyruvate carboxykinase, erythrocyte in anaerobic glycolysis as well as pentose phosphate pathway. Main substrate is glucose. The substrate exported is the lactate, hemoglobin, enzyme of the pentose phosphate pathway. All are used. In previous slide, I said that if any alternation occur in the metabolic pathway, there are some medical or surgical condition arise. So we have to necessary to basic understanding in metabolism. Just see this table. This is the table of the major metabolic feature of the principal organ, means this is the normal major metabolic feature of these organs. And if any alternation is seen or any metabolic change is seen, there are some medical or surgical condition arise. We will see this thing in the detail in the individual chapter of the metabolism, that which medical or which surgical condition arise during the metabolic alternation of the pathways.
In this video, we tried to understand basic key points related to metabolism, like as a definition of metabolism, subdivision of metabolism by various figures, various type of metabolic pathway and their basic organization by various figures, At the end, we tried to understand major metabolic feature of principal organs. When we will read individual chapters for metabolic pathways, we understand overview of metabolism in detail in particular pathway. We will understand in detail of clinical application in metabolism, means what happened during alternation of metabolism reaction.